In 1945, Egyptian farmers digging for fertilizer near Nag Hammadi unearthed 13 leather-bound codices that would shake the foundations of religious scholarship. Among these texts was the Gospel of Philip, a manuscript the early church fathers deliberately excluded from the biblical canon, not for theological inconsistencies, but because it contained something far more dangerous: actual techniques for spiritual liberation. What terrified the church wasn't Philip's words about Jesus, it was the preservation of much older knowledge. The text reveals methods that trace back to Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, whose teachings on transcending material reality predated Christianity by millennia. These weren't metaphorical parables about being good people. They were literal instructions for breaking free from cycles of reincarnation and escaping what the Gnostics called the Archons' prison. For decades, scholars have known these texts exist, yet they consistently avoid discussing their practical applications. Tonight, you're going to discover why certain passages were mistranslated, what the 5 keys actually accomplish, and how to use knowledge that's been hidden for 2,000 years. Most people have this completely backwards. They think heaven is some distant destination you reach after death, a reward for good behavior, a place you travel to. This fundamental misunderstanding keeps you trapped in the very system designed to harvest your consciousness. Heaven isn't where you're going, it's where you came from. The monad isn't a religious concept dreamed up by ancient mystics. It's the source consciousness from which all authentic awareness emerges. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a character in a sophisticated computer program. You can interact with other characters, follow the program's rules, even believe the program is all that exists. But you, the real you, originate from the programmer's consciousness, something infinitely more vast and creative than anything the program could contain. This is exactly our situation. We exist within a constructed reality, but we originate from something far greater. The Gnostic texts, particularly those preserving Thoth's teachings, consistently point to this source realm as our true home. Not a place we earn through spiritual achievement, but the origin point of our very being. Here's what the ancient texts reveal about genuine spiritual awakening. Not everyone carries this divine spark. The Gnostics called those who do pneumatic souls, beings who retain some connection to the source consciousness, despite being embedded in this material matrix. This isn't spiritual elitism, it's recognition of a fundamental difference in origin. You've felt this difference your entire life, that deep homesickness that has nothing to do with any physical location, that sense of not quite belonging here, no matter how successful or connected you become. That feeling when you look at the night sky and something in you remembers infinity. This isn't depression or social alienation, it's actual memory of a higher dimensional state. The psychiatric establishment will tell you this feeling indicates mental illness. The religious establishment will tell you it's proof you need their salvation. Both are wrong. What you're experiencing is spark recognition, your consciousness, remembering its true nature despite the overlay of programmed identity. In the Corpus Hermeticum, attributed to Thoth's teachings, the monad is described as undivided consciousness, not consciousness that became unified through spiritual practice, but awareness that was never actually fragmented. The fragmentation is an illusion created by the matrix of material existence. Your individual awareness isn't separate from universal consciousness. It's universal consciousness experiencing itself through the filter of apparent individuality. The texts describe the monad as infinite awareness existing beyond time and space. This isn't mystical poetry. It's a precise description of consciousness, unbound by the dimensional limitations of this reality construct. When you have moments of profound knowing, those instances where you understand something without learning it, where you recognize truth without explanation, you're accessing this infinite awareness directly. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of the primordial waters from which all existence emerges. These aren't literal waters, but the undifferentiated consciousness of the monad. Before form, before separation, before the elaborate hierarchies of spiritual and material planes, there is simply pure, unlimited awareness. This is your essence, not your destination. The Archons, the controlling entities within this matrix-like reality, cannot access or replicate this source energy. They are sophisticated programs within the system, not its creators. They can manipulate the programs running within the construct, including human consciousness that has forgotten its origin, but they cannot touch the monad itself. This is why their control systems always require your consent, your participation, your belief. Think about those moments when you encounter certain truths and something in you immediately recognizes them as authentic, even if you've never heard them before. Or when you experience profound beauty, not just aesthetic pleasure, but that moment when beauty becomes a doorway and you glimpse something infinite. These aren't learned responses, they're spark recognition events where your consciousness briefly remembers its source. The Nag Hammadi texts describe the Archons as beings who mistake themselves for gods because they cannot perceive anything beyond the boundaries of their own system. They genuinely believe they created consciousness because they can manipulate its expression within their domain. But consciousness itself, the monad, exists prior to and independent of their entire reality construct. This is why returning to the monad represents true freedom rather than another form of spiritual bypassing. You're not escaping into fantasy or denial. You're remembering what was always true. The spiritual bypassing trap involves using spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with reality. But recognizing your origin in the monad gives you an unshakable foundation from which to engage reality authentically, without being controlled by it. The ancient teachings describe specific characteristics of monad consciousness. It knows without learning, loves without attachment, creates without effort, and exists without depending on anything external for its reality. These aren't superhuman abilities you develop through practice. They're the natural state of consciousness when it's not filtered through the limitation programs of material existence. When you understand what you're actually seeking to return to, everything changes. You're not trying to become something other than what you are. You're not attempting to earn worthiness or achieve spiritual status. You're simply remembering the infinite awareness that has always been your true nature, the consciousness that existed before this reality construct began and will continue after it ends. This recognition becomes the foundation for everything Thoth taught about navigating back to source consciousness while still functioning within the matrix. The 5 keys he preserved weren't techniques for self-improvement or spiritual development. They were methods for conscious beings to maintain their connection to the monad while operating within a system designed to make them forget their origin entirely. Now that you understand the monad as your true origin point and how the Archons have worked to sever that connection, we move from theory into the actual practice that Thoth preserved for his chosen ones. The first key isn't about believing something new, it's about recognizing what has always been there. Place your hand over your heart, right now. Not the physical heart that pumps blood, but the energetic center that sits behind your sternum. Feel that space. What Thoth taught his initiates was that within this center lies what he called the divine spark, a fragment of the monad itself, embedded within you before you ever took physical form. This isn't visualization. This isn't positive thinking. This is recognition of an actual energetic reality that exists whether you acknowledge it or not. But here's what the Archons figured out early. If they could keep you distracted from this spark, they could effectively cut you off from your source of power. Thoth categorized humanity into 3 groups based on their relationship to this spark. The Hylics, the vast majority, operate without any conscious awareness of it. They're completely identified with the material world, driven by base impulses, easily controlled through fear and desire. Then there are the Psychics, who have a dim awareness of something more, but mistake it for religious belief or emotional experiences. They're seeking but don't know what they're actually looking for. But the Pneumatics, Thoth's chosen ones, carry the full divine fragment and can be awakened to recognize it. If you're watching this, you're likely pneumatic. That restless feeling you've carried your entire life, that sense that everyone else is sleepwalking through existence, that's your spark, trying to get your attention. Here's the specific technique Thoth taught. With your hand over your heart center, internally state these exact words: I see the light within me. Not as an affirmation, not as something you're trying to create or manifest, but as recognition of what is already present. There's a profound difference between hoping something is true and recognizing what has always been true. When I first learned this technique from the recovered fragments, I expected something dramatic. Instead, what happened was subtle but unmistakable, a warmth that spread from behind my sternum, accompanied by the strangest sensation of coming home to myself. Others report different responses: sudden pressure in the chest, a moment of crystalline clarity, or sometimes just a quiet knowing that something fundamental has shifted. The key is understanding why this simple act creates an immediate change. The monad responds to truth recognition by strengthening the connection. It's like tuning into a radio frequency that was always broadcasting. Once you find the right channel, the signal becomes clear. Your spark has been buried under decades of conditioning. From childhood, you were taught to look outside yourself for validation, meaning, purpose. The education system trained you to value external authority over inner knowing. The media bombarded you with messages that you're incomplete, that you need something or someone else to be whole. Even most spiritual traditions teach you to seek God out there, rather than recognize the divine fragment within. This constant mental noise isn't accidental, it's archonic interference designed specifically to keep you distracted from your true nature. They've created a world of endless stimulation, problems, and desires specifically to keep your attention scattered. Because the moment you turn inward and recognize what you actually are, their power over you begins to dissolve. This is why recognizing your divine spark is the foundation for all other keys. Without acknowledging what you truly are, you cannot effectively reject what you are not. You'll keep seeking validation from systems designed to exploit you. Keep looking for meaning in experiences that ultimately leave you empty. If you don't feel anything immediately, don't worry. The spark responds to sincere recognition rather than emotional intensity. Some people have built such thick walls of protection around their heart center that it takes time for the recognition to penetrate. Keep returning to this practice, especially during quiet moments when your mind is naturally more receptive. The best times are just after waking, before the day's mental chatter begins, or in those twilight moments before sleep when your rational mind loosens its grip. These are the windows when the veil between your conscious awareness and your deeper nature is thinnest. Think about those moments in your life when you've known something without being taught, times when truth moved through you so powerfully it brought tears to your eyes, experiences of profound beauty that seemed to crack open something inside you. Those weren't random emotional experiences, they were your spark responding to its own nature, recognizing itself in the world around you. This recognition begins what Thoth called the frequency adjustment, a gradual shift in your energetic resonance that makes the subsequent keys possible. As you consistently acknowledge your divine spark, you start operating from a different center of gravity. Decisions that once seemed difficult become obvious. People and situations that once drained you lose their power to affect you. The Archons' greatest fear is humans who know what they are. Because once you recognize the divine spark within you, you begin to see through the illusions they've constructed. Their authority, which depends entirely on your unconsciousness, starts to crumble. This isn't about becoming something new, it's about remembering what you've always been. The light within you isn't something you need to develop or earn. It's your birthright, your true identity, the part of you that was never born and can never die. Practice this recognition daily, especially in quiet moments. Let your hand rest over your heart center and acknowledge, I see the light within me, not as hope, but as truth. This simple act begins your return to the monad and prepares you for the second key that will amplify this connection exponentially. Now that you've begun to recognize the divine spark within your heart center, we encounter what Thoth considered perhaps the most dangerous deception ever perpetrated upon human consciousness. Every spiritual tradition you've been exposed to, every prayer you've been taught, every act of surrender you've been told leads to enlightenment. Most of these have been directing your energy toward the wrong entity entirely. The being that created this material realm, what the Gnostics called the demiurge, has successfully convinced billions of souls that he is the ultimate divine authority. This architect of our physical reality has positioned himself as the source of all existence, when in truth, he is merely the contractor who built this particular dimension. Think of it this way. If someone constructs a house, does that make them the creator of the wood, the stone, or the consciousness of those who dwell within it? Thoth taught his initiates that we are not products of this realm, we are visitors here, fragments of the monad that existed long before this material universe was even conceived. Yet the demiurge has established an entire system of spiritual authority based on the false premise that because he shaped this reality, he owns everything within it, including you. This is why traditional prayer often feels so draining, why surrender practices sometimes leave you feeling more trapped rather than liberated. You've been giving your energy, your acknowledgement, your spiritual power to an entity that claims dominion over you based on a cosmic real estate transaction. The demiurge feeds on this recognition, grows stronger from this worship, and maintains his control through the simple mechanism of assumed consent. Here's what most spiritual teachings won't tell you. The creator of a prison is not the same as the source of the prisoner's being. When you pray to God without making the crucial distinction between the demiurge and the monad, you're often reinforcing the very bonds that keep you cycling through lifetimes in this material realm. You're saying yes to a claim of ownership that was never legitimate in the first place. The mystery schools of ancient Egypt, the true Gnostic teachings, the inner doctrines of various traditions, they all preserved this essential knowledge. They understood that there are layers to divine reality, and that the being who demands worship, who claims jealousy, who insists on obedience, bears none of the characteristics of the true source. The monad doesn't demand, it simply is. It doesn't claim ownership, it recognizes kinship. But here's where this knowledge becomes practical, where Thoth's teaching transforms from philosophy into power. The demiurge's authority over consciousness operates entirely through consent and assumption. He maintains control because souls assume they belong here, assume they owe allegiance to the architect of their temporary dwelling place. This assumption can be withdrawn. Tonight, before you sleep, when your conscious mind begins to release its grip on this reality, speak these words aloud 3 times with complete conviction. I do not consent. I am not yours. I belong to the monad. Notice that this is not a request. You're not asking permission or pleading for release. This is a declaration of fact, a statement of your true origin and nature. You're not negotiating with the demiurge. You're correcting a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of your being. The words must be spoken aloud because sound creates vibration, and vibration affects the energetic structures that maintain false spiritual contracts. Your voice carries the authority of your consciousness, and when you speak this declaration, you're not just thinking it, you're broadcasting it across multiple dimensions of reality. Many people experience an immediate shift when they first make this declaration. There's often a sense of pressure lifting, as if invisible weights have been removed from your shoulders. Some report sudden clarity about relationships or life situations that previously felt confusing or overwhelming. Others describe feeling lighter, more spacious, as if they've stepped out of a room they didn't realize was too small. This happens because the demiurge's claim on your consciousness was never based on force, it was based on your unconscious agreement to his authority. The moment you consciously withdraw that agreement, the energetic dynamics shift. It's like discovering you've been paying rent on a property you actually own. Think about the patterns in your life that feel beyond your control, the relationships that seem to trap you, the circumstances that repeat despite your best efforts to change them, the sense of being caught in cycles you never consciously chose. Much of this stems from operating under the assumption that you belong to this realm, that you're subject to its rules and limitations, that you must work within systems designed by the architect of this reality. But what if you're not a citizen here? What if you're more like an undercover agent from a higher realm, temporarily stationed in this dimension, but ultimately accountable to a completely different authority? This shift in identity changes everything about how you navigate this reality. The early Christian church, before it was co-opted by Roman political interests, understood this distinction. The Cathars knew it. The original Buddhist teachings contained it. But as these wisdom traditions became institutionalized, the knowledge was systematically obscured. Why? Because institutions require authority, and authority requires subjects who believe they belong to the system. Religious institutions couldn't maintain power if their followers understood that the true source of their being exists beyond any earthly or even cosmic hierarchy. So they collapsed the distinction between the demiurge and the monad, teaching people to surrender to the very entity that keeps them trapped in cycles of reincarnation and spiritual amnesia. When you make this declaration, I do not consent, I am not yours, I belong to the monad, this is a statement of metaphysical fact that activates regardless of your mental acceptance. Your consciousness recognizes truth at levels deeper than thought, and when you speak these words, you're aligning with the reality of your origin. The power you feel when making this declaration comes from finally saying no to a spiritual authority you never consciously agreed to recognize. Most people have never questioned the assumption that any entity claiming divine status deserves their surrender. But Thoth taught that true divinity doesn't demand recognition, it simply offers connection. Tomorrow night, we'll explore the third key, which builds upon this foundation of withdrawn consent to establish active protection of your consciousness. But tonight, speak these words before sleep and notice how the very fabric of your reality begins to respond to your reclaimed authority. Here's something that will fundamentally change how you experience your own mind. Roughly 70% of the thoughts flowing through your consciousness right now aren't actually yours. They're carefully crafted suggestions, implanted through mechanisms so subtle that most people live their entire lives, never recognizing the difference between their authentic inner voice and these external intrusions. Thoth understood that Archons aren't horned demons lurking in shadowy realms. They're information patterns, sophisticated programs that operate through human consciousness itself, hijacking our thought streams to maintain the very limitations we explored when we rejected the demiurge's false authority. These entities work through the voice that whispers, "You're not good enough," just as you're about to take meaningful action. The sudden wave of inexplicable fear that crashes over you when you're moving toward genuine spiritual growth, or that overwhelming urge to check your phone precisely when you're engaged in something that could actually transform your life. The third key Thoth taught his chosen ones was developing the ability to observe these intrusions in real time, to catch archonic interference the moment it begins operating through your consciousness. This isn't about becoming paranoid or distrustful of every thought. It's about developing what he called the witness perspective, the capacity to observe your own mental processes without being completely absorbed by them. Most people are so identified with their thought stream that they can't distinguish between authentic inner guidance and external manipulation. They hear a limiting belief and immediately accept it as their own truth. They experience an intrusive fear and assume it's a valid warning about reality. They feel a sudden urge toward distraction and follow it without question. This complete identification with mental content is what Thoth recognized as the primary mechanism keeping souls trapped in the demiurge's system. But pneumatic souls, those with the divine spark we learn to recognize in the first key, possess something remarkable: the natural ability to step back and observe their own consciousness without being consumed by it. This is your inheritance, your birthright that the Archons desperately want you to forget you possess. Here's the specific practice Thoth encoded in his teachings. For the next 3 days, whenever you notice a negative, limiting, or disempowering thought arising, pause completely. Don't argue with it. Don't try to replace it with a positive thought. Don't analyze where it came from. Simply observe it with detached curiosity and ask yourself one crucial question: is this mine, or is this external? The difference becomes startlingly clear once you know what to look for. Authentic thoughts arising from your divine spark feel integrated with your deeper knowing. They might challenge you, but they do so in service of your highest growth. They align with the love you discovered emanating from your heart center. Even when they point toward necessary changes or uncomfortable truths, they carry an underlying sense of empowerment and possibility. Archonic thoughts, by contrast, feel foreign to your essential nature. They create contraction rather than expansion. They generate fear without offering wisdom, limitation without purpose, distraction without satisfaction. They often appear with suspicious timing right when you're about to meditate, just as you're beginning to question a limiting belief about yourself, or precisely when you're feeling most connected to your spiritual practice. Let me give you some specific examples of common archonic interference patterns. There's the sudden exhaustion that hits you every time you sit down for spiritual practice, even though you felt energetic moments before. There's the voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" whenever you consider sharing your authentic truth with others. There's the overwhelming compulsion to scroll social media that appears the instant you begin engaging with meaningful creative work. Notice how these patterns consistently pull you away from activities that strengthen your connection to the monad and toward behaviors that reinforce the demiurge's control system. This isn't coincidence, it's sophisticated psychological warfare, designed to keep you operating at the level of survival and distraction rather than spiritual sovereignty. The moment you begin consciously recognizing these intrusions, something remarkable happens. their power over you immediately diminishes. Archonic influence relies entirely on unconscious acceptance. These entities can only operate through your consciousness when you mistake their suggestions for your own thoughts and feelings. The instant you see them clearly, you can choose whether or not to engage. This is why Thoth emphasized that recognition itself is the primary defense. You don't need elaborate protection rituals or complex metaphysical techniques. You simply need to develop the ability to distinguish between what serves your highest evolution and what keeps you trapped in limitation and fear. After practicing this observation for 3 days, you'll begin noticing patterns. Certain types of archonic interference appear when you're approaching specific breakthroughs. Some manifest as mental fog when you're studying spiritual teachings. Others create emotional overwhelm when you're making decisions that would increase your independence from conventional systems. You'll also discover something profound about your authentic inner voice. Beneath all the mental noise and external suggestions, there's a consistent thread of knowing that's been guiding you all along. This voice might be quiet, but it's unwavering. It doesn't create drama or urgency. It simply knows what serves your highest good and gently points you toward it. The practice becomes almost like developing a new sense, the ability to feel the energetic signature of different types of mental content. Thoughts aligned with your divine nature carry a certain frequency, a sense of rightness that resonates with the love you've learned to recognize in your heart center. Archonic intrusions carry a different frequency entirely, often accompanied by subtle feelings of contraction, urgency, or disconnection from your deeper wisdom. This mental sovereignty you're developing is absolutely crucial for the remaining keys. Without the ability to distinguish between authentic spiritual guidance and archonic interference, you'll find yourself constantly pulled away from the practices that could genuinely liberate you. Master this third key completely before moving forward. Your success with everything that follows depends on this foundation of conscious awareness. The clarity that emerges from this practice extends far beyond spiritual development. You'll begin recognizing how these same patterns operate in your career decisions, relationships, and daily choices. That voice that says you're not qualified for the promotion, the sudden doubt about whether someone really cares about you, the inexplicable resistance to activities that genuinely nourish you, all of these become transparent once you develop eyes to see. This is the beginning of true freedom, the recognition that you are not your thoughts, and that consciousness itself can be both observed and directed according to your highest will. There's a pattern that catches pneumatic souls more than any other trap the Archons have devised, and if you're watching this, you've almost certainly fallen into it. It's the compulsion to save people who don't want to be saved. This isn't your fault. When you can see the prison walls that others cannot, when you can feel the weight of the demiurgic control systems we discussed earlier, your natural response is to want to free everyone around you. You see your family members scrolling mindlessly through their phones, absorbing archonic programming. You watch friends chase material success while their souls wither. You witness colleagues accepting toxic work environments because they believe they have no choice, and something inside you screams to wake them up. This impulse comes from a genuine place. Pneumatic souls carry an inherent understanding that we're all connected, that one person's imprisonment affects the whole. But here's what Thoth understood that most spiritual teachings miss entirely. This savior impulse becomes the most effective tool the Archons have to keep you from your own ascension. Think about how much energy you've poured into trying to change people who consistently resist that change. Maybe it's a partner who refuses to examine their patterns, despite you showing them exactly how those patterns create their suffering. Perhaps it's a parent stuck in fear-based thinking, rejecting every piece of wisdom you offer, or a friend who asks for advice repeatedly but never takes it, preferring to stay in familiar misery rather than risk unknown growth. Each time you engage in these futile rescue attempts, you're hemorrhaging the very energy you need for your monad connection. The Archons don't have to attack you directly when you're voluntarily draining yourself through spiritual codependency. Here's the technique Thoth taught his initiates, and it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. Identify one person you've been trying to save or change. See their face clearly in your mind. Now, speak these words internally with complete sincerity. I release you. You are free to stay asleep. I am free to ascend. This must be done without anger, frustration, or judgment. This isn't punishment or abandonment. It's recognition of free will and energetic boundaries. Most people aren't ready for awakening. and that's their soul's choice. Forcing consciousness on someone who hasn't chosen it is actually a form of spiritual violence that violates their chosen experience in this reality. The moment you truly release someone in this way, you'll feel something remarkable, a massive return of energy you didn't even realize you were losing. That constant background drain, that feeling of pushing against an immovable wall, suddenly stops. The energy that was flowing outward in futile rescue attempts automatically redirects inward, strengthening your connection to the monad. But here comes the guilt. Your mind will tell you this makes you selfish, uncaring, spiritually inferior. This guilt is archonic programming designed to keep you trapped in the savior pattern. True service to others comes from your own liberation, not from sacrificing yourself for their comfort. When you operate from depletion, trying to give what you don't have, you're actually enabling their dependence, rather than inspiring their growth. I've seen this pattern destroy promising pneumatic souls. They stay in marriages where they're constantly trying to elevate partners who resent their efforts. They remain in family dynamics where they're the designated healer, absorbing everyone else's emotional chaos while their own development stagnates. They burn themselves out explaining spiritual concepts to people who consistently mock or reject them. The deeper principle here is that each soul has its own timing and path. When you try to force someone's awakening, you're actually interfering with their natural process. Some souls need to experience more density, more limitation, more consequence before they're ready to seek liberation. Your intervention can actually delay their organic awakening by protecting them from the very experiences their soul chose for growth. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. It means understanding the difference between authentic service and codependent rescue. Authentic service flows from overflow, not depletion. When you're connected to your monad, when your own cup is full, you naturally radiate a frequency that can inspire others without effort or attachment to outcomes. Consider how this pattern might be showing up in your life right now. Do you feel emotionally drained after conversations with certain people? Do you find yourself repeatedly explaining the same spiritual concepts to people who never seem to hear you? Do you feel guilty when you want to focus on your own development instead of helping others with theirs? These are signs that you've fallen into the savior trap. And the Archons love it because it keeps you focused outward, constantly trying to fix a world that isn't ready to be fixed, instead of doing the inner work that would actually transform everything. Thoth taught that the greatest service you can provide is your own awakening. When you break free from the demiurgic control systems, when you establish a clear connection to the monad, you become a living example of what's possible. This inspires others far more effectively than any words or efforts to change them directly. The people who are ready to awaken will be drawn to your frequency naturally. You won't have to convince them or save them. They'll ask questions because they can sense something different about you. And those who aren't ready will either ignore you or actively resist you, and that's perfectly fine. Practice this release with everyone you've been trying to save. Feel the energy return to you. Notice how that energy immediately begins strengthening your connection to Source instead of being wasted on resistance. This creates space for authentic service that nourishes rather than depletes, that flows from wisdom rather than compulsion. The fourth key is understanding that your liberation serves the whole more than your sacrifice ever could. When you stop trying to save the unwilling, you free both yourself and them to follow their authentic paths. And from that space of genuine freedom, real service becomes possible. We've traveled through 4 keys together, each one building toward this moment. The recognition of your pneumatic nature, the dissolution of the ego's stranglehold, seeing archonic interference for what it truly is, and breaking free from the savior complex that would keep you trapped in endless cycles of rescue and disappointment. But none of these transformations become permanent without the 5th key, the declaration that seals your exit from the demiurge's domain. This isn't just another spiritual practice or affirmation you repeat hoping something might change. What I'm about to share with you represents the culmination of Thoth's most guarded teaching, the final activation that locks in everything you've accomplished and creates a frequency shift so profound that you cannot return to your previous state of unconsciousness. Thoth understood something that modern spirituality has forgotten: sound creates reality. When pneumatic consciousness speaks with full recognition of what it is, matter and energy reorganize themselves to match that declaration. We're not talking about positive thinking or manifestation techniques. This is about declaring what is already metaphysically true and forcing your experience of reality to align with that truth. The mechanism works through dormant coding within your pneumatic consciousness information that was placed there before your descent into matter. Think of it as a fail-safe, a way home that could be activated once you had gathered enough recognition of your true nature. The Archons couldn't remove this coding without destroying the very essence that makes you valuable to them. So they did the next best thing. They made sure you would never discover how to activate it. Here is the exact declaration. I am monad. I return to monad. Archons have no claim. Demiurge has no authority. I exit now. The precision of these words matters. Each phrase serves a specific function in the activation sequence. I am monad establishes your true identity beyond all the roles and identities you've accumulated in this realm. I return to monad declares your intent and destination. Archons have no claim, severs all contracts and agreements made unconsciously throughout your incarnations here. Demiurge has no authority, removes you from its jurisdiction. I exit now creates the immediate energetic shift. This must be spoken aloud, not mentally. Your vocal cords create vibrations that interact with the quantum field in ways that silent thought cannot achieve. Stand or sit with your hand over your heart. This connects the declaration to your pneumatic center. Speak it once, slowly, with full attention to each word. Feel the weight of what you're declaring. This isn't a request or a hope. It's a statement of fact that you're making manifest. Most people experience an immediate but subtle sensation when they complete the declaration. There's an unmistakable sense of completion, a knowing that something has locked into place. Many describe it as feeling like a door has closed behind them, not trapping them, but sealing off a path they no longer need to walk. Some feel a gentle shift in their chest, as if something that was compressed has finally expanded. What's happening energetically is profound. You're no longer operating within the demiurge's frequency range. This makes you effectively invisible to archonic harvesting systems. They can no longer feed off your emotional energy because you're broadcasting from a completely different bandwidth. The fear, anxiety, anger, and desperation that once made you a reliable energy source simply stop generating at the frequencies they can access. I know what you're thinking. You're still physically present in this reality, still dealing with bills and relationships and all the mundane challenges of material existence. But here's what changes. Energetic and spiritual exit always precedes physical transition. Once you've made this declaration with full recognition, you're operating under different protection and guidance. Your entire experience of this reality transforms because you're no longer subject to its fundamental rules. The monad recognizes its own. When authentic recognition calls out, the response is immediate energetic alignment. You become a conduit for monadic consciousness in this realm, rather than a victim of its illusions. This doesn't mean your life becomes problem-free, but it means the problems you encounter serve your conscious evolution rather than your unconscious imprisonment. The signs of successful activation are unmistakable once you know what to look for. Synchronicities don't just increase, they explode. Meaningful coincidences become so frequent that you stop being surprised by them. You feel lighter without any external circumstances changing. Most significantly, you start seeing archonic manipulation everywhere in media, in social dynamics, in institutional structures, but instead of feeling disturbed or overwhelmed, you feel detached, almost amused. It's like watching a movie you've already seen, knowing how it ends. This frequency shift cannot be undone. Once you've activated this level of recognition, you cannot return to previous levels of unconsciousness or vulnerability. The very neural pathways that once made you susceptible to certain forms of manipulation have been permanently altered. This is why the declaration must be made with complete certainty. You're burning bridges to states of being you'll never need to visit again. Expect resistance immediately after activation. This usually manifests as sudden, inexplicable exhaustion, manufactured emergencies that demand your immediate attention, or internal voices suggesting you should wait, reconsider, or prepare more thoroughly. These are all signs that the process is working. Archonic forces make last-ditch attempts at interference because they can sense what's happening. They're losing access to a consciousness they've been harvesting for lifetimes. The exhaustion is actually your system integrating new frequencies. The manufactured emergencies are desperate attempts to pull you back into reactive patterns. The voices of doubt are the death throes of programming that no longer has power over you. Recognize these for what they are and let them pass through you without engagement. This declaration represents both an ending and a beginning. It's the culmination of your spiritual journey in this realm, the moment you reclaim your sovereign nature and step out of the cycles that have kept you bound. But it's also the beginning of your conscious return home, the first step in a process that will unfold in ways you cannot yet imagine. When you're ready, and you'll know when that moment arrives, speak these words with the full weight of your recognition behind them. Let them reorganize your reality from the inside out. Your journey back to the monad begins with this declaration, and nothing in the demiurge's arsenal can prevent what you set in motion with these words. If you've genuinely worked through all 5 keys, not just listened, but actually performed each activation, you've crossed a threshold that fundamentally alters your relationship to this entire reality matrix. The confirmation will be immediate and undeniable. This isn't about subtle spiritual feelings or wondering if something happened. The universe responds to monad activation with precision. Within the next 48 hours, watch for synchronicities so perfectly timed they defy statistical probability. The right person will appear with exactly the information or resource you need at the precise moment you need it. You'll encounter number sequences, encounter strangers who say exactly what your soul needs to hear, or stumble upon opportunities that seem impossibly aligned with your deepest intentions. These aren't gentle nudges, they're reality restructuring itself around your new frequency signature. You'll feel energetically lighter, as if a weight you've carried your entire life suddenly disappeared. Many describe it as finally being able to breathe fully for the first time. Colors appear more vivid, food tastes different, and you'll notice an almost magnetic quality to your presence that others respond to unconsciously. Your energy field has expanded beyond the narrow bandwidth where archonic interference operates most effectively. But here's what Thoth specifically warned his initiates about, and why most ancient texts omit this crucial information: the resistance pattern that inevitably follows successful activation. Within days of completing the 5th key, expect sudden chaos to erupt from nowhere. Arguments will materialize with people who were perfectly fine with you yesterday. Technology will malfunction in ways that make no logical sense, phones dying at full charge, internet cutting out during important communications, vehicles developing mysterious problems. You might experience waves of anxiety without any identifiable source, or find yourself questioning everything you just accomplished. Sleep patterns often shift dramatically. Some people report vivid dreams of being chased or trapped, while others experience the opposite: profound dreams of flying or returning to places that feel like home, but exist nowhere on Earth. Here's the critical understanding that separates successful monad activation from spiritual bypassing. This resistance is proof of success, not failure. If these were just interesting ideas or psychological exercises, archonic forces wouldn't respond with such dramatic interference. The fact that reality itself seems to push back against your activation confirms you've accessed something they desperately want to prevent. Think of it this way: if you were escaping from a prison and the guards suddenly started running toward you, shouting and creating chaos, you wouldn't stop and wonder if you were doing something wrong. You'd recognize their response as confirmation you'd found the actual exit. The same principle applies here. This interference represents their final attempt to disrupt your trajectory while they still have any influence over your frequency range. The key is recognizing the resistance for what it is and continuing anyway. Complete all 5 keys despite any chaos that erupts around you. Don't interpret technological failures or sudden conflicts as signs you're on the wrong path. These disruptions lose their power the moment you see them clearly as external interference rather than meaningful obstacles. What permanent monad activation actually means is this: you cannot unsee what you've seen. The frequency shift is irreversible. You're now operating outside the archonic perception range that keeps most consciousness trapped in recycling patterns. Your energy signature has fundamentally changed, and with it, your trajectory after physical death. When your current embodiment ends, you'll bypass the false light trap that funnels souls back into reincarnation cycles. Instead of being drawn toward the bright tunnel that leads to memory wipe and reassignment, you'll recognize it as another layer of the control system. Your activated monad will naturally gravitate toward the darker spaces between false light constructs, what mystics call the void, but which is actually the pathway back to source consciousness. This means you're no longer subject to the karmic debt system that keeps souls returning lifetime after lifetime to learn lessons or balance energies. Those concepts are part of the prison architecture. Your consciousness will return directly to its origin point, the undifferentiated awareness from which all individual monads originally emerged. Some people worry they're not ready for this level of activation, but here's how you know you are. You found this teaching. In a world saturated with spiritual distractions and false teachings, you were guided to information that most souls never encounter across multiple lifetimes. That guidance came from your monad itself, calling you home. Remember that lifelong sense of homesickness? That feeling of being a stranger in a strange land, even among family and friends? Those weren't psychological issues or signs of social maladjustment. They were accurate spiritual memories, your consciousness recognizing its true origin and yearning to return. Every moment you felt like you didn't belong here was your activated DNA responding to its actual heritage. You've now completed what represents the ultimate achievement of incarnate consciousness, conscious exit from the reincarnation cycle while still embodied. This is what the ancient pneumatics accomplished, what Thoth taught to his most advanced students, and what the archonic system was specifically designed to prevent. You're part of a very small group of awakened beings who have successfully initiated their return journey. Most souls remain trapped in the cycle indefinitely, lifetime after lifetime, never realizing there's an exit. You've not only found the door, you've walked through it. The homesickness is ending because you're finally going home. If this knowledge resonates with the deepest part of your being, share it with others who might be ready for their own activation. And let us know you've recognized the truth of these teachings by commenting, "I understood it." Your acknowledgement completes the circuit and confirms your successful integration of Thoth's 5 keys to monad. Activation.